Walter, we're live now. Just want to let you know.
Okay, thanks. We'll wait a few more minutes for folks to get on. Hello, John Mooney. I see you there.
Hi, Walter.
Good evening.
Good evening.
We have Jan on twice. That might be the problem with the audio. So Jan, if you could log off one of the. There you go.
All right, give everybody one more minute and then we'll get going.
Is this better?
Jan, it looks like you're logged in twice. So if you totally mute your computer and just work off the phone, that might work.
Hello?
That sounds great, Jan.
Okay, good.
Perfect. Can you hear everybody? Can you hear me okay?
I can hear you fine.
We're good then. All right.
Oh, how wonderful it is.
Okay, let's go ahead and get started. I'll call this meeting of the Reston Comprehensive Plan Task Force to order. Welcome, everybody. It looks like we have a good turnout. Hope everybody is good and relaxed and now ready to focus on our local things as all the national stuff is playing out and the election's over. So welcome, everybody. First thing I wanted to do tonight was to talk about process and subgroups. So we had spoken at, I believe, the last meeting about a subgroup process, and everyone seemed to be amenable to having subgroups as necessary to flush out language for comprehensive plan updates. So that is something we're now looking to put into process. And if everybody remembers, we also have the list of topics to be covered. And that list is a little bit, it's grown a little bit. It may grow a little bit more. But the idea here, and let's talk this through, is that we would continue with our topic specific approach, and we would also combine that with the subgroup approach. Now, one of the things that we'll need to do, I think, to get ready for future task force meetings, and we tried this out a little bit today, is send out homework assignments ahead of time. So tonight, a little bit later, we're going to be talking about the village centers. And so Jose sent around information from the current comprehensive plan on village centers. Now that's I think, helpful reading to get ready for tonight. And for some of our topics, we won't have that kind of background reading, but for some we will. So one of the things that we are looking to do, or I would like to see done tonight, as we start going through topics, what we need to do then is start thinking about, one, is there a subgroup, is a subgroup appropriate to take the lead on writing it, or for whatever reason, is this something that the task force wants to give direction to staff to go write it? So we'll be going through, and for each item, we'll basically discuss whether or not it should be a subgroup or whether it should be staff given direction by the task force to take the first cut at plan language. So I'll just be quiet and see if anybody has any questions, comments, or suggestions on that. And at this point, go ahead and just unmute yourself if you are a panelist and you want to make a comment. Let's try to do that tonight. Gary, did you want to make a comment?
I think there's two things. I just going to jump in here a little bit. One of the things for the future, I think that might be helpful is for us to hear from some of the experts on where we're going. So getting into these topics and understand what the future holds would be good for maybe the next meeting. We talked about that at the last one. And also, I think having an approach here where we've worked together on some issues that could be helpful to have John Carter involved in a lot of things relating to this. It's just helpful, I think, as we go through this. I think you're on mute.
Thank you, Gary. Yeah, I was starting to get feedback and I had to do that.
Sorry, I'm sorry.
No, thank you. I think similar to what we did with the planning principles, I think John will be very active in whatever subgroups are actually formed. So bless you, John. Yep, you're on. Okay, good. Yes, we did have John and I had a very good conversation. One of the things we discussed, frankly, was whether to start over with Reston's comprehensive plan. And frankly, that's something that I think it's probably a little more than we would want to do at this point. We do have chapters in the existing comprehensive plan. And one of the things that if you look at the topics that we have and you do a crosswalk, which is something that Jose has actually done, a crosswalk between the topics and the chapters of the existing comprehensive plan, I think it really provides a roadmap for where we need to go in terms of updating the current comprehensive plan without just trying to do it all from scratch. I'm not sure we would finish if we tried to do that. So that's the idea.
Walter, this is Bill Penniman. Yeah, I mean, I agree with you on that. The comprehensive plan is, one, very long. Two, it covers a lot of topics that have more detail and many of which are not controversial, I don't think. It's difficult to write. I mean, there's a certain art to that kind of document. So I guess, first place, I don't remember where the list is of what the topics will be. So I'll take a reference to that later. But my thought on the writing is that maybe the best thing is for the subgroups, whatever they are, to go back, look at what's in there, come out with an outline, collection of bullet points of changes they think may be appropriate, have those discussed in the larger group because there may be agreement or disagreement, and then direction be given to the staff to take the first crack at doing an update that people can read. That seems like it's sort of an orderly process that as many people as may be interested in the topics can have a say before somebody starts saying, well, this is what it's going to say in the document itself. Thank you.
Thank you, Bill. Does anyone have any thoughts on that suggestion? So basically, subgroups would, if you will, start with an outline, maybe a set of bullets and approaches, and would bring that back to the task force, and then the actual writing would be done by of the draft plan text would be done by staff.
Walter, this is David Donnell.
Yeah, David.
I think I might be willing to sign on to Bill's suggestion, but I'm wondering whether the staff might want to draft guardrails to make sure that that we don't wander off into the woods and get crazy about stuff. I think that would be a useful exercise for us to have that prior to doing those bullet points.
Yeah, guardrails, maybe guidelines from staff. David, are you thinking on a topic specific basis or more overall?
Now, I think in order to make it a manageable activity or a manageable start, that I think we ought to focus on the topics. At least at first, focus on the topics.
Okay, thank you, David. I see Christopher Daniel has his hand up, and then we'll go to Tammy.
So I think I want to just echo David and Bill there. I think that's a great approach, but I do like the idea of having some staff, even if it's not guardrails, notes as to what we should be focusing on for those bullet points of that outline. Because I do think that's the best way for a subgroup to spend time and focus, is, as was suggested, come up with some bullets of these are the changes we'd like to see, bring them back to the group, and then let staff take that first craft. Because I agree, it is an art form, crafting these documents.
All right, thank you. Tammy, go right ahead.
Thank you. I am going to vigorously disagree. The history is that we spent 5 years, and Bill Penniman and David Vannell were on the 5-year task force working on phase 1 TSA areas. No resident of the PRC had any say in phase 2 whatsoever. And this is our turn to formulate a plan. We are not novices. There are some of us that have been doing this for 10 years. And I would very much, the TSA is complex, but we have the PRC outline that exists, and we have plenty of ideas. And I would like the people on this task force to set up the structure, and then if we miss something, it can be added in. But I'm telling you, we have John Mooney and Larry Butler have made a list that they've sent to you of things to be covered, as well as some of the others of us who work on the Reston Association land use, and that is all PRC people, already have topic areas, and we have the master plan existing. So I think we're well capable of handling the PRC thing. I would like the staff to be involved in providing for us information and data that we need to make smart choices. But I think this needs to be our thing. The staff has a lot of other business to attend to, and they can weigh in as advisors and afterwards. But I think there are smart people in this group, and I think we should be writing our own. Thank you.
All right, thank you, Tammy. Other thoughts on this topic? Go right ahead and unmute yourself if you don't have your hand up.
Walter, it's John Mooney.
Hi, John.
Hi. Tammy mentioned that Larry and I had shared some thoughts with Walter about how we might use small working groups to complete the task force work. And we divided our comments into needed preliminary work by the whole task force, and then guidelines for the working groups themselves. And if I'll just, I apologize that I did not send this out to everybody. I'll do so. But among the items to be done by the whole task force, I think we need to clearly delineate each working group's scope. So whether we go by chapters and allocate our focus group topics to those chapters, or however we organize it, I think we need to delineate each working group's scope. Secondly, I think we need to establish time frame, structure, and process for the groups. Thirdly, I think we need to have a reasonable number of working groups. I don't think we need, I think too many is no good. I think we need to, I feel that maybe 3 or 4 might be a reasonable number, but we need to discuss that. We need next to identify community resources for supporting the working group. And this can be a collaborative process. You know, some of the technical stuff county staff can help us with, but I think we need to know what resources we have. Next, I think we need to make sure, and this is Walter's task, that we get representation of all viewpoints on the working group, because there are different viewpoints represented in our task force. And I think people should be able to volunteer for it, but it's Walter's job to come to a balanced task force, and anybody can attend the meetings, but those responsible for getting the work, I think we need to have a group responsible for getting the work done. And then I think we need to have substantive task force input prior to the work group beginning its deliberations. I think we need to say what are the issues that we're concerned about, what are options we currently see as task force members to address those issues, and weigh, even do preliminary weighting of the options. And then eventually a task force drafting committee to, if the task force is going to do it, we need to have a committee to draft it. And then I think, so I'll leave it at that. I'll leave it at that. But I think how we set this up and how we give task force input into the working groups and how we coordinate those working groups with staff, we need to talk out and agree on.
Thank you, John. That was a very thorough recommendation. There are a couple more hands up. Michelle came up, and then I don't want to lose what John's suggestions are as a process for moving forward. Michelle?
Hi, yes. So, you know, I'd like to agree too that this would be great if it could really be the community's document. You know, staff has a lot of information that they can provide, but I think where this would be the most impactful and powerful if it was really our community's document. You know, there's one thing that I will say, and no offense is meant by this at all, but there's somewhat of a repeat player problem where, the community, especially, individual voices, we don't have lawyers and lobbyists and high paid consultants working for us, constantly going to staff and communicating our views to staff. And, I think we need to keep that in mind, that that's really who they're hearing from a lot. And, we saw that with Campus Commons, where, staff knew the lobbyists very well, but did not reach out to the neighborhood. And so I do question their engagement with the community. And I think we lose that if this becomes their document. And so I really think that it should be our community's document. Thank you.
All right. Thank you, Michelle. It took me a little bit to get off mute. Sorry. So Gary, and then I do want to wrap this up with the next step. Gary, did you have your hand up?
Sorry, I'll say that I agree with Michelle and John Mooney, and just leave it at that. That's what I had my hand up to say, something similar to what she said.
Very concise. Thank you, Gary. Okay, so my suggestion is that we move forward into the next topic area, and with basically the outline that John suggested in terms of delineating each work group scope. In this case, we'll see if we need a work group or a subgroup on transportation, and then talk through time frame, and then basically move on to the other points from there. So I think instead of talking too much more about how we're going to do this theoretically, my recommendation is that we basically get started and then deal with at least the first couple topic areas this way and see how it looks and feels. So anyone have any questions on that? Okay, then let's move on then to transportation. Now here is a topic. We had an initial presentation by staff. Then we had a series of, I guess, questions that were asked, or a set of questions that were asked of task force members, who then provided staff a number of suggestions and transportation issues that they wanted to see addressed. And staff has come back with a document, and who from DOT is here to talk through the transportation document that was circulated and summarize that.
Hi, Supervisor Alcorn, John King, Transportation
Hi, John.
Planner. Good
Great.
evening.
Thank you. So John, why don't you, if you could, give us a quick summary of the document that you sent out, and then what I want to do is move it into task force discussion of what the task force wants to do in terms of comp plan language, and whether or not we need to put this into a working group for working some things out. So yeah, John, go right ahead.
Okay, great. Happy to do that. So we did send, and good evening, everyone. We did send an initial document. It has 5 topic areas. We went back and listened to the session on September 30th. I actually thought it was a really good working session, and tried to consolidate into the written response some of the topics that were brought up by multiple task force members. They were the county and the state's roles and relationship, the grid street that goes between Isaac Newton Square and American Dream Way, local transit service, the Wheeling Avenue corridor, and then funding transportation improvements. So we're also, just to let you all know, we're also developing responses to all the specific questions and comments that we've received, and we'd like to have those out shortly. It's just taking a little bit longer to get the, all the questions answered. But that initial response basically addresses those 5 topic areas that we heard multiple task force members discuss. I just wanted to say a couple words in respect of everyone's time about a couple of those topic areas. Basically, the FCDOT and VDOT relationship. We do work very closely with the state. The road design is done using design standards and guidance that national, state, and local transportation organizations provide. Those standards are generally reviewed and updated by the state. And then in urban or urbanizing areas, there's actually now additional design guidance that's available, and the county is working with the state through their formal process to apply those alternative design standards, specifically in the Reston area TSAs. So that process is ongoing, which I think is a good thing. I'm happy to get more information about it out, but just wanted to mention that. And then also just a note, I know that Grid Street connection that is potentially impacting the golf course, obviously is very important to the task force and the community, and just wanted to provide some notes on it. I know there was some questions about how it came to be in the plan and such, so that's in there. Sort of the history of it, I guess, and then just to reiterate that I think the intent was to certainly be as minimally impactful as possible. And then if that road is taken off the plan, think about, it's a trade-off, basically. It was intended to provide relief to Sunset Hills. If it's not, if it's not there, doesn't come into existence, then what else could we do that, if you still need that relief of the Sunset Hills Road? So just some things to think about. So those are my notes for tonight. I'm happy to throw it back to everyone else and follow up as needed.
Okay, thank you, John. I know we received at least one set of comments on the DOT memo or the topic analysis. Lynn, do you want to? Lynn, I think you're on the line here. Lynn, do you want to make any comments? I see you sent some around.
Yes, I'm here. Hi, Walter.
Okay, great. Yes, hi, Lynn.
Hi, everyone. Yes, I apologize for the tardiness of my getting back to the task force members. But I did go through the document a little at the last minute, just before this meeting. And as we shared in the previous meeting, the members of the task force were not briefed regarding the addition of this and another line that appeared on the conceptual grid of streets that Planning Commissioner Carter brought up at one of the informational meetings. My feeling, and I know as a representative of the Reston Citizens Association, that we feel that this one issue is a real deterrent to building or rebuilding trust between the county's Department of Transportation and the citizens of Reston. We have been asking for this. We have pointed out that this line on the map was not something that was discussed. And when I looked at the last paragraph under topic number 1, that reads, there is no funding identified for this street. However, further study would be needed to determine when a street such as this would be beneficial for traffic issues on Sunset Hills Road. My comment was, with all due respect, this is an unacceptable conclusion to the lengthy discussion that took place during the Comprehensive Plan Task Force meeting when we were discussing this. And this road and the road that Planning Commissioner John Carter pointed out should be removed from the conceptual grid of streets. that is an acceptable outcome. Thank you.
All right. Thank you, Lynn. Appreciate you doing your homework and giving feedback to the group. Others have comments. Other comments on the DOT memo. Burton, did you have your hand up there?
Yes, I do. Yes, I do.
Good,
yeah, so, I appreciate Lynn's point of view and, recognize that she has a lot of expertise in this area, but, I'm a member of this task force too. I'm a Reston resident too, and I use the W&OD trail very often. And, I don't think that this street that we're talking about that is very contentious necessarily needs to be eliminated for the future. Like, I can see how maybe 10 years, 20 years from now, a street like this would be beneficial. So I don't think it needs to be definitely ruled out forever. I think that as time goes on, it can be like the pros and cons can be evaluated, but it doesn't need to be eliminated forever right now. So I just wanted to say that.
Okay, thank you, Burton. Other thoughts on the content of the DOT memo? Gary, did you have your hand up to speak? Not sure if that's a new hand or an old hand.
No, I'm sorry. I'll take it down. So,
Okay, no problem. Yeah, I know. I can barely tell when it's on or not. Tammy.
Thank you. I will say I sit on the Reston Planning and Zoning Committee, and the developer who controls 3/4 of Isaac Newton was livid about this street. The staff had asked them to curve their grid within Isaac Newton to accommodate it. They did not. They hated it. That's a developer who hates it. Golf Course Overlook had to do a whole bunch of jumping through hoops. These are approved projects. They didn't like it. And Wheelock has been talked to, and the American Dream Way is a private road, and they unequivocally said they would not connect to the road from nowhere, assuming they're still the owners, because VDOT would make them tear down the existing bridge that is right at the junction of Sunset and American Dream Way and rebuild it exactly the same, but this time being seen building it to assure that it met VDOT standards. So American Dream Way is private, and they said no deal, they're not connecting to it. So this is a 5-year plan. If in the future a grid street there, and I don't understand what this grid street is, this is not a TSA area. It connects to one of the TSA areas, Isaac Newton, but it is not a TSA area. It predicates destruction of certain greens on the golf course. So unless some developer behind the scenes has pre-approval to do this secretly without the community knowing, there is no rationale for this street to exist. And to Burton's point about the WO&D trail, mercy, we wouldn't want flanking streets on each side of the WO&D trail with traffic whizzing by if the road from nowhere were possible. You would want to have, I would think, a beautiful environment to enjoy the WO&D, as well as the linear park that we hope we can develop along it. So, and from that aspect, environmentally, you sure as heck wouldn't want to have this. So again, connecting developers don't like it. So I think that needs to be put into the formula. I was very pleased. Thank you, Mr. King, for saying, even mentioning the fact that it might be able to go away. You're the first person on the planet who said that. And if it weren't for COVID, I'd be there hugging you. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Tammy, for not hugging John.
Yeah.
In these COVID days. Other thoughts on this topic or anything else in the DOT memo? I don't see any hands up. John, did you want to say something, John Carter? Maybe not. Okay, so here's the next question. So we've heard a couple of folks express thoughts on the first topic on that road. We've also heard from FCDOT that there are additional items that they're still looking at and working on, and they'll provide additional information back to the task force. And here's my question: do we want to create a subgroup, or do we want a subgroup to work on pulling together basically an outline of recommended language for the comprehensive plan or changes to the comprehensive plan? Or do we want to have this task force just give direction to staff and have staff do it? Mr. Mooney, let me call on you. You have been thinking a lot about this process. What is your recommendation? John, did you have any thoughts on this, John Mooney?
Sorry, I was still muted.
It's okay.
Flapping my lips, but nothing was coming out, fortunately for everyone. I think it would be good for there to be a small group to do at least this, to make an outline of issues, which we could then discuss with county staff. I mean, many of us were taught, and Walter and I were talking about this today, many of us were taught, you know, in grade school and high school to make outlines where you have all of the parts in a nicely subordinated order. So there's an orderliness to it, a unity to it. And I think having a group interested in transportation issues who would do that, who would take all of these suggestions, order them, and then enter into dialogue with Fairfax County DOT staff, talk some, and then we see how we draft it. Some more technical parts might be done by staff, but I think as Tammy and others have said, a lot of folks in the community have given a lot of thought to transportation issues. So I think minimally they need to be co-authors. That's my view. But I think the first thing is, I think a subgroup that would again do an outline summarizing all of the issues in some sort of organized way, and then work in a collegial way with Fairfax County DOT and bring that outline back to this group. And then if we agree, then we will decide how and by whom the draft would be done. That's my suggestion. I can't hear you, Walter.
No, I'm the one whose lips are moving and no one's hearing. Thank you, John. That's a very good suggestion, I think. Let me ask John King from FCDOT. John, could you work with a subgroup along the lines of what John Mooney was suggesting just now?
Oh, of course. Yeah, I'd be happy to. I think it's okay.
Okay, great. Now, John Mooney,
Sure.
did I just hear you volunteer to lead this subgroup, or did I just, my ears playing tricks on me?
I would be happy to do that. I'd be honored.
Thank you. Others interested in working on this subgroup and this on transportation, these transportation topics. I see hands up. Maybe the chat room is a good place to put it there. If you want to volunteer to do that, why don't you go to the chat room? In the meantime, and note in there. In the meantime, I see Jennifer has. Jennifer, did you want to say something?
I did, because I understand that transportation is an issue that this group needs to talk about, but I think that the real issue is beyond transportation. It's connectivity. So it's not just about the roads. It's about how we connect. It's the bicycle paths and how the Reston trail system plays into, you know, the connection points between the TSAs and the PRCs. It's an issue of connectivity, and I actually think that that's the topic that should be addressed, because it's more inclusive and it makes more sense based on how the plan is written, where every time you get into a transportation topic, it breaks it out between all of those different connectivity points.
That's an excellent point, Jennifer. And I think that's completely within scope of this transportation topic. I agree. And there is one of the challenges with transportation in particular is there are going to be multiple places in the Reston Comprehensive Plan that need to be reviewed and perhaps updated. So it is going to be, and I think what you're talking about in terms of connectivity for all of Reston, but also within the TSAs and also outside of that and in between, that's language that needs to be reviewed. There is already a fair amount of language in the plan that addresses that, but I would really welcome additional review of that language and update of that language to make sure it actually reflects what the community wants to see. So thank you very much, Jennifer. And did I hear you volunteering for this subgroup, Jennifer? I don't know.
I will volunteer. I love the writing part of the plan and the details, but I will tell you, I am by no means a transportation or connectivity expert.
Okay, no problem.
This is not my area of expertise, but I totally understand why it's an area of John Mooney's expertise.
Okay, fair enough.
I offer assistance if he needs it as the head, absolutely, but it's not my area.
Okay, fair enough.
Say.
So I see Jan has her hand up. Jan, did you also want to say something on this?
Yes, I was just wondering when we talked about getting in the group and drafting the outline and then taking it to staff, and then staff makes their recommendations and then you take it to the task force, whether it would be better to do the draft, put it in front of the task force, and then take it to staff and see what they do with it. That way the task force has an input before it goes to staff as to what staff may have changed from the original outline proposition.
Okay, thank you, Jan. I think, yeah, I'm not sure how much, I think there may need to be some communication between a subgroup and staff, at least for completeness and maybe, you know, just in terms of background. But beyond that, yeah, I'm totally fine with having, matter of fact, I would want the subgroup, frankly, to come back to the task force with an outline, as John has suggested, before going into any detail for language changes. So I do definitely think that totally makes sense to me, Jan.
Thank you.
And I see Burton also has his hand up. And Burton, I believe you said something. Sounds like you might be willing to be on this subgroup as well.
I think I was meaning to put my hand down. So I just wanted to say that I'm interested in helping on this subgroup.
Okay, great. All right, thank you. Let's try to keep, if possible, well, let me ask John this. John, how big of a subgroup would you recommend for this topic? What would you be looking for, 3 or 4 or more? Or?
I think we could have up to 7 and still function.
Okay.
I think after 7, small group work becomes more difficult.
Okay. Okay.
So right now, just to tell you whom I've seen Gary Maupin, I've seen Jan Bradshaw, I've seen Lynn Wolston, I've seen Burton, Jennifer kind of, at least for the computational role. And have I missed anyone else who's volunteered?
I would like to get somebody from has a little bit of an industry and business.
That would be very. We need to be balanced.
Yeah.
From the beginning, we need all viewpoints.
I don't remember volunteering.
Who was that?
That was Jan Bradshaw.
Oh, hey, Jan.
Yeah, I've mentioned you already, Jan. I have you down on the list.
Okay, we'll see what I can do for you.
Walter, can I interrupt for a minute? This is Tammy.
Sure,
Tammy. An
Tammy.
overreaching concern before we start setting up subgroups.
All right, please.
I am concerned of how we can make a plan when we do not yet know what the total population of one Reston is that we're planning for. To me, this is backwards. I think we need to discuss that before we jump into subgroups. And I also think we need to, I think Gary alluded to it, I'm not sure if people picked up, but we were supposed to have some people coming in to tell us the effect that they believe COVID will have on how we structure. We may have a complete change of pattern for transportation. It's a huge possibility. So I would like to have that information before a lot of effort is put into the transportation or anything, frankly. So we know what Reston is going to be from 2021 and on, what we think. Obviously, nobody has a crystal ball. Thank you. But I would like to have that, some idea of the maximum population that now we have the TSA plus the PRC. That is going to affect very much what is possible as far as development in the PRC, because a lot of density has already been put into the TSA. And a lot of it have been approved there. Thank you. That's just an overriding concern I had. Thank you.
So good timing, Tammy. In 2 weeks, we actually have that as the primary topic on the agenda. And what I've asked staff to do is to come back, DPD staff, I've asked them to come back and provide us what the target population of one Reston would be, TSA and non-TSA, under the current comprehensive plan language. So basically, this would be, what would the population be? I mean, it's really what numbers have been used in the transportation models and the other modeling efforts. And we just haven't seen that number.
Right.
We just haven't seen the math. And so, so we need to see that number, and then we need to have a discussion about where we go from there, and talk a little bit about balance, and talk a little bit about, because we do have some issues. You're right. We have population, we have jobs, we have obviously infrastructure. Those all have to be in balance for this to work. And the other thing I'm looking forward to is when we have a population number like that, as we go through and make changes, like you're saying. We'll be talking about the village centers initially here in a few minutes. What will that do to the population number? How will that affect things one way or the other? And we need to be able to have that metric, if you will. So yeah, that's coming in 2 weeks.
Thank you.
Thank you, Tammy.
Walter?
Yes, John.
Would you let me do a recheck here? So I've received a few more chat messages. So right now I have the transportation connectivity working would be Gary Maupin, Lynn Molston, Burton. Michelle Kimmel wanted to be on, and I thought she was only suggesting the name for the group. So she wants to be on. David Vanell volunteered. Someone suggested that John Carter should be at least invited to join. And Jennifer, if you want to, you can join us too. Now, Jan, I'm told that Jan Bradshaw, I'm told that I misunderstood you. You did not want to volunteer. Is that correct? That
well, I could, but I could also not if you've got too many people.
Your choice. Your choice. If it's an issue that you're really interested in,
it is.
Okay. Well, let's have you on it then.
John, Michelle Kimmel here. Actually, you can take me off. Okay. I think especially with Jen on, I'm fine.
Okay, but again, we're going to try to communicate with y'all, throughout this. So anyone who wants to join our meetings, we'll let you know when we're meeting. Okay.
All right. Thank you, John Mooney. Who was that? Jan or no?
Yeah. Will it all be in Zoom?
Yes.
Good. Thanks.
Okay. Let's do this. If anyone else has anything more they want to say on transportation, otherwise we'll move on. And just FYI, I will coordinate with John Mooney afterwards to make sure we have the right balance on that working group, and we have all the voices we need.
Walter, if you do want some balance, this is David Gill. I'm happy to sit on the transportation.
David, that would be great. Thank you, David.
David Gill.
Okay.
Thanks, John.
Thank you, David.
Sure.
Okay. Anything else on transportation before we move on? Okay. So, John, did somebody have something else?
It was Jan. Jan, you're unmuted.
Yeah. Hi, Joe. Yeah, I just wanted to see if is there any way that the road to nowhere could be incorporated, or is that something we could discuss at our committee?
I think the working group could definitely discuss that.
Okay, very good.
Yep. And then, so John, with that in mind, tell us what your next steps would be as lead of the subgroup.
John, you're muted.
My next step would be to try to, not to try, I will send out a message seeking a first meeting time. And then I will indicate all of the resources I know for, that are published, that we would have at our disposal already about transportation issues. And then the third thing I would do is try to put down a rough list of all the transportation issues transportation and connectivity issues that I have heard thus far through the task force. And with that, then we would set an agenda for the first meeting. Does that make sense?
That sounds great, John. And I would just encourage you to communicate on the inventory of issues with John King.
John's going to be a partner through all this.
And the other request I would have would be to make sure that Jose, at least Jose from my office, is part of the meeting. If not, setting it up.
Willing to be a part of that.
All right, great. Thank you, John. That sounds good. And John, what I would also ask is that perhaps for the next task force meeting in 2 weeks, if you would be basically ready to come back and give a report on the status of that, and at that point also have a timeline.
Okay, we'll do.
Great. All right. Anything else on transportation before we move on? Okay. All right. That's good. So we did our first topic area with our new process. So let's keep going. Parks and Rec and open space. We did get responses from the Park Authority, provided the Park Authority's point of view on a couple things. Who do we have from the Park Authority tonight to talk to and summarize the responses?
Good evening, Walter. Good evening, Task Force. This is Anna Bentley. I'm the manager of the Park Planning Group. How are you, Walter?
Good, thank you.
Good. Thanks for having me tonight. Would it be helpful for me to just sort of summarize what we provided in a written response?
Please do, and then we'll open it up to questions and talk a little bit, get the sense of the task force on where the task force wants to go on this issue and what might be missing.
Okay, great. So we received from Jose, from your staff, Walter, 5 questions that were posed at the task force meeting at which we presented, and Andy Durlester presented more specifically. The questions included park proffers and whether or not staff is tracking or monitoring that. And the answer is yes, we've begun that process and we're working through that. We'd be glad to circle back when we have more data we can provide to you. I also wanted to highlight 2 other things in our responses. You certainly can read through them, and I know there will be discussion after this, but 2 things to highlight from those 5 questions. As far as design and quality assurance in pocket parks, and really all of the parks that we see come through the development review process in Reston, staff works with applicants to ensure that the design of those park spaces, of on-site park spaces, is consistent not only with the Urban Parks Framework Policy guidance, but also you'll recall that Reston has, Reston Plan Language has, or rather, the Reston TSAs have design guidelines, Reston design guidelines that were put together by staff with task force and resident input. So those are 2 elements that we use to help us guide when we review design of on-site park spaces. So I just wanted to sort of highlight that fact. And the other thing I'll highlight for this group before I turn it back to you, Walter, for discussion, the question of public space, public open space, and privately owned public space. So staff's approach is to encourage private development, maintenance, and ownership of on-site urban park spaces with full public access easements, so full, complete public access easements. This is particularly true when we're looking at smaller park spaces that are integrated in developments and are designed with materials and features which are typically not found in our park system in suburban parks. And so the expertise as far as maintenance of those is not present. And the owners of those spaces are far more likely to keep them in a condition that we just are not prepared to do given our current expertise of the more suburban context. However, when new developments proffer to provide larger parks with the kinds of facilities that we typically find in our FCPA parks, so for example, athletic fields, sports courts, playgrounds, those sorts of things, the county may prefer to be responsible for ownership. We may prefer to be responsible for the operation and maintenance of those facilities. So an example is the athletic field that will be at Isaac Newton Square, which will be, of course, completed by the developer, and then once it's complete, dedicated to the Park Authority for continuing maintenance. So those are just 2 elements I wanted to highlight from our responses. You certainly have the document and can read the other things if that's helpful. And I'll turn it back to you, Walter.
All right, thank you very much, Anna. And I just realized that those Q&As were not, the 5 questions and answers were not sent around to the task force, but we will send that around.
Okay.
I think you're sending that now, is that right?
I just sent them right now.
Okay. So
I'm happy to, should I touch on the other 2 responses? Would that be helpful to you, Walter, or should I?
Yeah, go ahead and do that. And I would just point out, yeah, they just arrived, so go right ahead.
Okay, so the only other 2 questions that I haven't touched on, members of the task force, is the question was asked, does the learner, which is the Best Buy approval, include an athletic field? And the answer is the comprehensive plan guidance for athletic fields in Reston applies only to the transit station areas, the TSAs. And that learner best buy site is outside of the TSAs. That was question 3. And then the other question I didn't touch on already is the timing of the rec center at Reston Town Center North. Planning for that rec center is on hold until transportation and design issues with the Reston Town Center North master plan are resolved. No capital improvement bond funds are yet approved for that center. Thanks, Walter.
All right, good. Thank you very much, Anna. So those Q&A, and it's not very long, but it's about half a page or so. But Jose just sent that around, so folks that have access to email, take a look at that. The other thing is perhaps, Jose, perhaps you could put it up on the screen. Could you share your screen?
Yeah, I just need the presenter role, Lisa.
Okay, great.
Okay, just a second.
Okay, and as that's coming up, Anna did a good job summarizing what's in here. I would note there some of these elements are not necessarily comprehensive plan level issues, but several of them are. And the other thing I would just point out is some of these, for example, I think Anna did a good job talking to the county's policy up to this point on open space and privately owned and publicly owned open space. So, and that's something I know this task force is going to be talking a little bit more about. So, all right, there we go. So this is, hopefully everybody can, if you haven't been able to look at it on your email, this is the, these are the Q&A that Anna just addressed. So first related to monitoring park commitments, second about quality assurance about pocket parks, question about the learner property where the Best Buy is, and athletic fields, then the public open space, publicly owned, privately owned, and then the Reston Town Center North Rec Center. So does anybody have comments? Jennifer, I see has a question. Anna, if you could address this, when will the tracking of park commitments be done? Anna, do you want to address that?
Yes, happy to. Thanks for your question, Jennifer. We're working on it and I don't have a date for you, but we'll be glad to circle back. We have a lot of the information, but as you or anyone who works with large volumes of information, working through how to best portray the information, whether it's a list, is it a map, how deep into the proffer commitments do we go? So we want to make sure we have something consistent and meaningful to share so that we're all speaking to the same points and everyone is able to use the information on sort of the even access plane. So no one has to have any sort of special sort of expertise to comprehend what it's telling us. So I don't have a date for you, but I'm happy to report back.
Okay, thank you, Anna. So other questions, comments? I don't see anybody has their hand up, but if you want to just unmute.
Walter, yeah, this is
Larry. Hold on, Bill, go ahead, and then Larry. Bill, go ahead first.
Yeah, I can't comment on the zone approvals for the learner property, but I think the first task force, the guidelines it had for open space applied to North Reston as well, and it was not the TSAs and the North Reston area up to Barron Cameron were all part of the first task force's work. So we can all go back and look, but I think there are open space requirements in North Reston up to Barron Cameron as well. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Bill. Anna, yeah, might want to check if you could check that out.
Yeah, that is correct. The comment was that the guidance about athletic fields.
Athletic fields, yeah.
Applies only in the TSA. Yes, there are scores of other open space recommendations, not just for other areas of Reston, but for the county at large. But this question about the Best Buy learner site was specific to athletic fields, and so that's what we responded to.
Okay. Thank
this
you.
is Larry.
Larry.
Yeah, just so the learner site is in the Reston Town Center TSA. It's not in the TOD part of the TSA. So we just want to be clear about that. And, you know, Ann and I worked very closely on the original plan with this. And so whether or not there will be a subgroup put together for this, I will certainly participate in that. I guess there's a question of, is there enough there to make a subgroup when there's so many other things that probably will require subgroups?
All right. Thank you, Larry, for volunteering for a possible subgroup. No, appreciate that. Thank you. I see Jan has her hand up. Jan?
Yeah, I don't seem to be finding the information on the Q&A that was just sent out. I seem to have a lot of emails from, and I do see Lynn's email, Gary, thank you. I don't see the attachment as such.
Jan, I can send it to you. I think I have your email address. I can take care of that. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, good. Thank you, Jose. Does anyone else have comments or questions on the Park Authority responses or anything else relating to parks and open space that hasn't been brought up and flagged tonight?
I mean, Walter, this question number 4 related to, publicly open space instead of privately owned space was definitely in your charge and something that you definitely had a strong interest in. And so, having some direction of where you would like to see us go there as a task force, that would definitely be great insight for us to have.
Well, one of the things, and perhaps we need to have at a future task force meeting, or if there's a subgroup formed to work on this, perhaps we need to have another speaker. The Park Authority's role has tended to be on athletic fields and on the larger facilities, and I think Anna did a great job noting that. But we do have a number of smaller facilities. I mean, we have other county organizations, including RCC, that are, I guess, more accustomed to smaller county-owned facilities. And it is an open question, I think, as we go into more urbanized areas. What is the balance that we want to find there? Do we want to actually continue to have these open spaces be private? And there have been issues. I mean, we run into with restrictions. We've seen this in town center. In terms of restrictions on what people can do. We've also seen it by the Wheeling Metro station at the plaza there. And so some of the I would welcome at some point, and maybe tonight's not the night. Maybe we can get another speaker on this. More discussion on really more I would call it use and access issues for open space and all the issues that come with it, including equity issues. Frankly, we do have, when property is privately owned, it is much more easy to exclude certain people from those properties than if it's publicly owned. So we, I think, need to have a little bit more discussion on that. So if anybody has any other thoughts on that, go ahead and speak up. Otherwise, perhaps we will look to bring somebody who's more, who can speak more to those issues. Tammy, I see you have your hand up.
Thank you, Walter. I just wanted to comment on my observations, lots of observations from all of the applications that came before Reston Planning and Zoning. We had a preponderance of examples where applications were counting a sidewalk with a bush as a pocket park. And I think I might have even talked to Anna a little bit about this after the Reston DRB meeting on Town Center North. And maybe it was you, Anna, maybe it was someone else. But anyway, the concept that something is labeled a park when there is no function to it. It is, you have to provide a sidewalk to your dog walking area, and there's a bush next to it. That is not a pocket park. And that we be very careful that we're not falling into the trap of allowing development to count every square foot that's not in their building footprint as a pocket park or open space. It really has to be functional for the public to get some sort of recreation value from it. So that's the essence of my concern. Also wanted to bring up that the WO&D trail has a wonderful and we've talked about this a little bit, has a wonderful chance to be a very beautiful linear park from one end of Reston to another. And it's going to take some careful shepherding to get that through, to make that be a reality. But that is something like the High Line in New York or other linear parks that I think really could service a lot of different populations. And we're concerned about equity and availability. And I think that healthy living and having an environment that works. It's under the WNO, the electric super tower stations, but it is land that is available for that, and land for parks is so precious. So I hope we put that in the plan. Thank you.
Thank you, Tammy. So does anyone have any last things they want to note on this? Otherwise, what we'll do is, oh, I see Lynn has her hand up. And Lynn, go ahead and make your comment. And then what we'll do is talk about next steps on this topic. Lynn, did you want to say something?
I apologize. I was muted.
No problem.
I was apologizing. Thank you for recognizing me, and I will be very brief. I know that you want to move on. But I do think that in terms of open space within Reston, that we do need to be cognizant of the fact that the tennis courts and the recreational fields that we have as access to through being members of Reston Association is a private benefit that we enjoy as well. So thank you.
Thank you, Lynn. Okay, so it sounds like we've had a few comments on this, a couple of suggestions, not a whole lot of discussion. There are, I think, some additional issues relating to open space, particularly regarding use and access. And so what I'll do is look to get a speaker on that, and then we can bring the whole topic back to a future meeting and then get direction from the task force on what, if anything, we want to do in the comprehensive plan related to this. Okay. All right. Any final comments or questions on park issues and open space before we move on? Okay. All right. So we'll come back to that topic later, but let's go to, it's 8:11, so we have about a little over 45 minutes left. And we're now going to go to discussion of village center density. And St. Clair, is this you or Chris, or who is going to talk to this one?
This is St. Clair, and I'll be speaking on this topic.
Okay, take it away.
Thank you very much. Just waiting. I need the presenter already.
And while you're getting that, St. Clair, we are going to be having a discussion about this after your presentation, and then we'll look to see next steps, and we'll also be talking about if this needs to go to a working group or what would make sense for next steps on this topic.
It's Lisa. I just need a second to get Sinclair changed. There he goes.
Thank you. Okay, hopefully everyone can see the PowerPoint up on the screen. I am going to just give a very brief overview on the Reston Village Centers, because I know the task force was presented some kind of some reading material ahead of time to be able to read up on the Village Centers. So I'm going to keep it brief and then kind of open it up to the task force for discussion. So again, we're talking about Reston Village Center density. Just wanted to point out, again, in the plan, there are 5 village centers that are identified in the Reston comprehensive plan. I'm going from north to south. It's the North Point Village Center, Lake Ann Village Center, Tall Oaks Village Center, South Lakes Village Center, and the Hunter Woods Village Center. The first place that the village centers are referenced in the Reston plan are in the planning principles. So based on the current plan language in planning principle number 4, again, it references the village centers, that they're important community gathering spaces, including a mix of neighborhood serving retail, integrated with accessory office, institutional, and residential uses. It also points out that redevelopment to augment and enhance the village centers would be pedestrian oriented, should include a plaza as a central element, and provide adequate transportation to surrounding neighborhoods. Convenient public transportation options should make the village centers and the transit stations. Again, it then further elaborates on kind of the goals for redevelopment of the village centers. The plan talks about enhancing village centers as vibrant neighborhood gathering places, advancing excellence in site design and architecture, strengthening connectivity and mobility, and protect and respect surrounding residential neighborhoods. I want to point out that, again, the plan includes a process for redevelopment in the village centers. Again, it talks about any proposal has to demonstrate how it achieves the general vision and the planning objectives established for Reston. It's got to involve residents and businesses of the village center, again, to make sure that all stakeholders are involved, and allows for stakeholder input to build support for the redevelopment proposal. Talks about conducting a market analysis to provide information on the existing and proposed development and the viability of existing and proposed mix of uses, and conducting transportation analysis on existing and proposed developments. So with the board authorization for this study that we're now dealing with, there was language that talked about examining the current comp plan language to consider the feasibility of allowing additional density in the reference village centers. For this study, there were 3 village centers that were specifically referenced. There was the Hunter Woods Village Center, South Lakes, and North Point. And I guess the attempt was to look at allowing revitalization at a similar scale than existing development, while upholding the goal of maintaining the existing overall density in the Reston Village Centers. So again, that was something that was referenced with the motion for the study. So just to give some background on the 3 village centers, again, Hunter Woods Village Center, the current residential uses include low-rise multifamily units in the Hunter Woods Fellowship House, a high-rise multifamily apartment providing independent living for low-income seniors. The non-residential uses include the Reston Community Center, center facility, and a church, along with neighborhood serving retail uses. As far as the baseline plan recommendation for Hunter Woods, talks about neighborhood serving retail and services up to a 0.25 FER, integrated with accessory office, institutional uses, and residential developments. And currently there are no proposals for redevelopment for the Hunter Woods Village Center. The North Point Village Center, again, residential uses include low-rise multifamily units, some of which provide low-income housing. The non-residential uses include neighborhood serving retail uses, Similar baseline recommendation of neighborhood serving retail and service use up to 0.25 FAR, integrated with accessory office, service use, and residential developments. And again, for North Point Village, there are currently no proposals for redevelopment of that village center. And then the South Lakes Village Center, residential uses include low-rise multifamily and mid-rise multifamily units reserved for seniors. And the non-residential uses include neighborhood serving retail uses, some of which are located with direct access to Lake Monroe. And again, baseline recommendation is neighborhood serving retail and services up to 0.25 FAR, integrated with accessory office, institutional uses, and residential developments. I just wanted to add in during, I believe it was between 2017 and 2018, there was a proposed zoning ordinance for us in looking at the zoners, regarding the PRC district for Reston. During that process, there were some concerns raised by the Reston Association and the Coalition for Plan Reston. Some of these concerns were raised to staff, and in March of 2018, the then director of the Department of Planning and Development, Fred Selden, sent a letter to the Hardeman District Supervisor, Catherine Hudgens, kind of responding to some of the concerns that were raised. So I just included a couple of excerpts from that letter that had to do with the village centers. So one of the concerns that was raised by the Reston Association was a request for providing a statement as far as what areas were subject to redevelopment within the rest of the village centers. I guess there was concern of, again, the village centers include non-residential mixed-use areas, and then they also include residential development in each of the village centers. And just to summarize the response, what the letter entails is that staff believed that based on the current plan language, the area for redevelopment was the non-residential mixed-use areas, and that the residential development within the village centers is considered to be stable residential, and that those areas are not, the interpretation that applies not for those areas to be redeveloped. The intent is for redevelopment to be within the non-residential sections, non-residential mixed-use sections of the village centers. And then there was also some concern raised, again, from the Coalition for Plan Reston, again, regarding the proposed, again, what areas are subject to redevelopment in the plan. There was also concerns about the density for redevelopment. The residential developments within the village centers are listed as, are recommended for high intensity residential development, which some interpret could mean a maximum density of up to 50 dwelling units per acre. And there was a recommendation that the density range should be limited between a range of 21 to 30 dwelling units per acre. Again, the staff response was, again, it's not the intent for there to be redevelopment within the residential areas, but again, that is something that could be further clarified in the plan. So that is something that could be looked at during this process to see, is there a need for languages to further clarify, specifically within the village centers, what areas are intended for redevelopment. So I think that covers all I wanted to provide as an overview. I'm happy to answer any questions, and then I will turn it over to Supervisor Alcorn to kind of lead the discussion on this topic. Thank you very much.
St. Clair, thank you. But before I open it up to questions, let me just go over a couple of things with you. I think just for historical context here. So one of the things that got us to where we are with the plan language outside of the TSAs, there was and refresh us on the intent of phase 2 a few years ago. Basically, the residential areas, I'll call them the residential areas of Reston, were in effect downplanned, were they not, to as-built densities during the phase 2 process. Is that correct?
Yes, and that was correct. So with the intent of phase 2, it was kind of to identify, like within the PRC areas, that residential development is considered to be stable residential development, and that was not the area to really focus for any, increase in density, and then focusing that density within the TSA areas. But I think there were still some questions again within the village centers, because again, the village centers, you do have a mix of non-residential areas, and then you have the residential portions of the village center. So I think there were still concerns on, just to clarify, that even the residential portions of the village centers, again, are also considered stable residential areas, and it's not intended for redevelopment or increased intensity.
Yeah, and my understanding is that the last task force was also looking to have a little bit broader, I would call it down planning of those areas, but that those ideas were not completely carried through, at least as they relate to these village centers that we're talking about here. Is that correct?
Yes, for some of the history I've been able to research in the process. Apparently, yes, there was some language, I guess, that was in proposed plan language at one point, talking about, I guess, clarifying for, certain types of redevelopment that a comprehensive plan amendment would be required. But I guess during the public hearing process, that language was removed and that was not adopted.
Okay. All right. Thank you, St. Clair. And I know there's some folks on the task force that actually have more direct history than I do on this. So at this point, I'll just open it up to see if anyone wants to make any comments about this village centers and what we should put in the comp plan, or how the comprehensive plan should read for these 3 village centers. And Lynn, I see you have your hand up. Are you wanting to say something?
Yes, thank you, Walter. I had a question, and this, St. Clair, this was your slide that was titled Reston Village Centers. And this is the one that has the subhead January 14th, 2020. I was just a little confused about the language in that slide. Yeah, so examine the current comp plan language to consider the feasibility of allowing additional density in the reference village centers that allows revitalization at similar scale than existing. I don't know what the at similar scale than existing development is, unless that's what Walter was referring to as the as-built densities.
And I'll defer to Supervisor Alco for further detail, but from my understanding, it's saying, look at the, feasibility of allowing for some more density that might be needed to, encourage some revitalization of the areas, but not any, drastic or significant increase in density within those village centers.
Well, I think we've already encompassed that with Tall Oaks.
Well, if you notice, Lynn, Tall Oaks is not in the list. I mean, Tall Oaks is basically.
Oh, it was on the map. Oh, it's not in this list. Yes.
Yes, exactly. Because Tall Oaks has gone down a different path.
Right. Okay. Thank you.
It's a good point, and let me just explain a little bit, since yes, this was my language for this slide that's up there. So the question is, and this is actually a really good example of how the comprehensive plan can provide a long-term plan for specific areas. And in this case, there is not currently a rush of developers to come in and build 40 dwelling units per acre, 50 dwelling units per acre in our 3 village centers that we're talking about here. There's really not an immediate market demand. So the question is, But yet there is some language in the current comprehensive plan that would potentially allow for that, if not call for it, albeit with the caveats that St. Clair mentioned about the residential areas, currently residential areas in the village center. So the question for the task force is, what do we want to see in the current comprehensive plan? What do we want to allow for in terms of revitalization, redevelopment of the current village centers without having the developer, the property owner, come back and get a plan amendment? So that's really the question. How much do we want to allow the village centers to redevelop without having to come all the way back through a comprehensive plan amendment for the type of density that at least originally Bob Simon had put into the original master plan, but was never ever built.
And how will that play into the population figures for Reston?
Well, yeah, currently, and I guess I'd ask DPD staff if anybody can answer this. I'm not sure, but in a couple of weeks, when we have the population target for the current comprehensive plan, St. Clair, do you have a sense how that's going to be calculated? How the village centers are going to factor into that? Are you going to look at the land area in the commercial part as potentially at the high density, or no? Do you know?
That's something I have to discuss with our planning folks that are working on that, and I can get back to you.
Okay, yeah, we can get that next week or in 2 weeks. But Lynn, that's exactly I think one of the things in play that we need to also talk about. Jan, did you have a comment?
Yeah, just that what does, everybody knows this, but what does 0.25 FAR stand for?
Yes, can you go ahead and explain that, St. Clair? And also, please note that that's in the baseline plan. St. Clair, go ahead.
Yep, and I apologize. You know, we can be better about using terminology sometimes, but FAR is floor area ratio. So that's, again, looking on, kind of the ratio of per square footage to site area that, the amount of density that's allowed on certain properties or certain buildings. That helps.
So what do the initials actually stand for?
Yeah, so it's floor area ratio. FAR stands for.
Thank you.
Yep, and the current FAR, St. Clair, do you know the current FAR of these village centers? It's somewhere around that right now, right?
Yeah, I would have to check that to confirm that. That would take some research. We don't, you look at, what's in the plan, we know what's approved as, when applications come forward. It will take researching as built plans just to see exactly what has been constructed to see what the existing FAR is out. But that is something we can work on and provide, but I just wouldn't be able to provide that tonight.
Okay. I bet I know somebody who might know who has joined us. Mark Looney, I see you have your hand up.
Thanks. Sorry for being a little late. I had to appear before the Mount Vernon Council tonight, so it was a long drive from my dining room to my living room. St. Clair, do you know, or have you guys looked at whether looked into the existing zoning approvals for each of those 3 village centers, and whether there's any zoning approvals that are legacy from the original approvals that might affect what can or can't happen in the future in the village centers? The reason I ask is that with respect to Tall Oaks, the original 1960s or 70s development plans showed the possibility of medium density residential in that commercial area of the village center that just never got built. And so consequently, the transformation of Tall Oaks from its retail base to the residential base really was done under the current zoning on the property, as opposed to something that would implicate a change in the zoning and therefore further implicate the comprehensive plan. And so to the extent that some of these older areas have similar conditions, it might be good to just understand that as we contemplate what we might put in the comprehensive plan for those areas.
Yep, sorry, just had trouble unmuting. So yeah, we do have kind of history on the zoning history for all of the village centers. That is something, yeah, I can put together in a easy, comprehensible manner and have that shared with the task force so you can have that.
Okay, great. I see John Mooney and then Bill Penniman. And John, you're muted.
St. Clair, I actually, since I was very involved in the PRC ordinance amendment process very intensely, I actually have a spreadsheet here that talks about existing and improved units and also foreseen units. So I will share that with you. That may help. But let me tell, I'd like to do two things. One is to talk about the relationship of the village centers to a related issue, which is the preservation and redevelopment of residential areas. And the second thing I would like to talk about is the impact of exactly what the village centers, based on county planning staff's estimates in 2017 and 2018. They're enormous. So first of all, Walter has, we've had this dialogue before, and RA has asked that not only the village centers be attended to in the comprehensive plan revision, but also residential areas which county staff has deemed open to additional development. And Walter said, well, that's certainly understood to be included in the scope of our comprehensive plan revision. Walter and I spoke today, and I don't want to put words in your mouth, but my understanding is that you would now like to separate those issues, which I would endorse myself. And those are things like Charter Oak and St. John's Wood and so forth.
Yes.
That's the first point, and I'll pause to see if you want to comment on that, Walter.
No, thank you for bringing it up, and whether my expectation was that it would probably be too much to chew at one time, that we might need to deal with the village centers right now and then the residential communities perhaps at the follow-on meeting. But John, I hear you, and I know RA has wanted to make sure this was on the table for discussion, and it is.
Thank you. Now, so that people understand the orders of magnitude we're talking about in terms of what the present comprehensive plan as understood by the planning department in 2017 and 2018. So I will only do the revised numbers, which came out on December the 4th, 2018. They are much less than what came out in Leslie Johnson's letter of August 28th, 2017. But I will tell you what, for the village centers alone, what the county staff's listing of the existing and improved units are, okay, for the village centers. For North Point, the existing and approved, so they included the two of them together. Mark Looney, just so you know, in their documents then at least, they included the two categories together, was 154. The revised planned units was 1,212. So from 154 to 1,212. For the South Lakes Village Center, the current existing and approved units are 235. The additional, I should have just,
I think we lost John. Oh, he's back.
All right, John, you're back. John, you froze up at just the most exciting time, but yeah, go ahead.
So the existing South Lakes Village Center residential units that are existing or approved, 235. The additional units that county staff said was allowable in their December 4th, 2018 report was an additional 724. For North Point, where are we? No, pardon me, for Hunter Woods, it was, the existing is 494, the additional is 1,209. So those are that's why this is a really important question, really important.
Thank you for keeping those documents, John, and pulling those forward. I think that's useful to, I think, illustrate, even with the interpretation of what I call the Fred Selden memo, which St. Clair went over. We are still talking about a significant increase in at least units at those three village centers under the current comprehensive plan, above and beyond what's been approved and zoned, what's being built. So, Bill, I promised you would go next. Go ahead.
Yeah, I think we need to get clarification of what all those numbers mean, and how they're in the comprehensive plan, because at least the language I've seen in the comprehensive plan pertaining to village centers was a lot vaguer than that. So if those are already zoned and authorized, in the words of some lawyers, by right from here, then that's one thing we need to know. If it's simply some estimate of what could happen if the aggregate cap is lifted on development, that's a different situation, because that might tell us not to lift the cap. But I think that just sort of the general principle is, once we know what the framework is we're operating in, to the extent possible, we ought to leave the door open to potential redevelopment in the village centers, because without some growth opportunities and opportunities from a benefit standpoint to us of getting real plazas instead of parking lots, there's a real risk that they're just going to decline in their quality, their viability, and we'll end up with a less beneficial, less vibrant neighborhood opportunity to gather and but I think the key is to make sure that, to the maximum extent possible, the neighbors, the community, has to be really consulted and worked with by the developer before anything goes through. Subject to that, I think we should keep it flexible. As great as Lake Ann is, it has had a lot of trouble over the years because it doesn't have enough residential density right where it is. So I don't know the right answer, but keep it open, keep the community involved.
Bill, thank you very much. I think your comments and also John's comments really do illustrate why we need to have a good discussion of this here on the task force, and get the additional data that you're asking for, Bill, and understand what the numbers are, and then figure out what language or what revisions might need to go into the comprehensive plan. So this is good. And St. Clair, do you have any questions about what additional information you're being asked for this evening?
No, I think I'm clear on the information, and I could definitely put that together and send it back to the task force.
Okay. All right. So thank you, Bill. We got a few more minutes left. I'm going to call on Jan, and then what I'm going to do is, and it looks like we already have one attendee who has their hand up. So any other attendees that would like to speak, go ahead and raise your hand. Let Jose know. And Jan, did you have a comment at this point?
I just had a very quick a comment that Hunter's Woods has all those things right now. You have the community using the benches around the what used to be an oval that they made into sort of a park. We have the community center as an anchor. We have the residential that's right up close. I think that Hunter's Woods, of many of them, is used as a community center. Not mentioning Lake Ann, of course, because that is used as well. That's all.
Okay. Thank you, Jan. All right. Just checking. I don't see, let's see. Looks like I don't see any more hands. Looks like we may have an alternate and attendee or two who would like to speak. Jose, who do we have first?
I think Lisa has the power. I think she got into.
Yeah, I have it. We have Rick,
Myra,
and John.
Okay, so let's go ahead. Let's go ahead in that order. Rick, go ahead. You want to make a comment? Rick Hamilton? Rick, are you there? Did we lose Rick? Okay, let's see if Rick comes back. Looks like we lost Rick. All right, Rick will come back, I'm sure. Maura, let's go ahead. Maura Callahan, you have your hand up.
Yes, hi. I wanted to go back and revisit your comment and just make sure I understand. If I'm not mistaken, in 2015, the Planning Commissioner, Frank De La Faye, approved the removal of plan amendments, meaning you wouldn't have to seek a comprehensive plan amendment for building or whatnot in the village centers. Is that correct?
Well, I think it's a question of the scale. I think the language, there was language put into the comprehensive plan at the Planning Commission level that would have allowed redevelopment at a larger scale than the language that had come out of the task force.
Yeah, I'm reading Reston now. It says removal of the rule that Reston village centers would have to undergo a comprehensive plan amendment to promote redevelopment. So we are talking about possibly putting that rule back in place where we would have to have developers undergo a plan amendment.
Right. That's what we need to talk through. And
okay. Yeah, I don't understand why you wouldn't have them do that. I'd be curious to know the pros and cons of why you would or would not.
Yep. And that's exactly the conversation we need to have. And I think once we get some additional information from staff, we'll be able to frame it up and then have the conversation. But that's it.
Thank you. That's I just wanted to clarify, and I'd love to know why that was removed. Thank you.
Yeah. Okay. Mr. Farrell, I see you have your hand up. John Farrell.
Okay. Yeah. Can you hear me?
Can hear you, definitely.
For John Mooney's task force, I hope we have a broader focus than simply the TSA areas. The South Lakes Drive flyover, which has been discussed a lot, but I don't recall seeing it explicitly referenced in the comprehensive plan. Lawyers Road, the curve at Fox Mill, straightening it out. My memory is that ultimately Lawyers Road was supposed to connect to McLaren. And I don't know, that was on the comprehensive plan for a long time, Walter. I don't know if there are others transportation improvements like that we've kind of like lost track of. But I think we need to look at that because it goes to a lot of workers from south and west of Reston get to work. I invite anybody to go take a look at the backup on Reston Parkway or West Ox Road at 8:30 once COVID is over. That backup can frequently go all the way to Rugby. So I'm just concerned about that connectivity from outside of Reston. The other thing that I saw as a really serious omission in the comprehensive plan regarding parks and open space was simply ignoring Reston Association and its holdings and its trail system. And Lynn said this a little bit, but I think it needs elaboration. You know, the holdings of, the Park Authority only has 4 parcels in Reston. The Reston Association has the whole Stream Valley open space system, a couple of dozen ball fields. And yeah, they may be private, but the reality is there's no restriction on people, on the general public from using those facilities. I mean, there's no gates to our trail system or to our field system. And so it seems to me that we need to recognize that our open space and park system is principally in Reston, provided by the Reston Association properties, and they need to be incorporated and referenced, including maps, into our comprehensive plan. Thanks.
All right, thank you, John. And I see, and John Mooney, I presume you picked up on the transportation pieces there. So, Rick Hamilton, I see
I
is
would
back.
invite John Farrell. I would invite John Farrell to send me an email with those points he's mentioned, and if there are any other transportation issues that we need to consider. Secondly, I will point out that, as is well known to members of this task force already, I'm very concerned about the impact of development originated traffic non-TSA Reston too. So I share John's concern.
Thank you, John Mooney. And John Farrell, also, when we schedule the next discussion of public and private open space, I'll make sure that we address the issues that you raised as well. Okay, I see Rick Hamilton. Rick, I see your hand raised.
Can you hear me now?
Can hear you loud and clear.
Okay, good. Thank you. Yeah, several of the task force members tonight talked about the fact that this document should be the community's document and so on. And I kind of had a flashback to the night Carolyn and I attended your first town hall meeting after you were elected, and I had just come off of I think it was a couple of days earlier, the county strategic plan town hall soliciting public input, and what a unsatisfactory experience that was, to say the least. And I just want to say, I hope the task force keeps in mind that public input has to be meaningful and it has to be heard. And before you got here, that was not happening. And I'm hopeful we're in a different time.
Well, thank you, Rick. Well, thank you for participating in this, and thanks to everybody. I see we've had somewhere 15, 16 attendees tonight. Anyone else on the attendee list that would want to make a comment or ask a question at this point? Okay. All right. Well, we're getting close to 9 o'clock. I don't think we have to go always right up to 9 o'clock in order to have a productive meeting. But I did want to check and see if, as we get down through, I want to wrap up the Village Center discussion with this. I believe we have some additional information we're going to be getting from staff. And then I think we'll have information that we need, hopefully, at the next time we talk about this, to give direction on what might need to change in the comprehensive plan. So, so with that, I'll just go to item 6 on the agenda. Does anyone have any questions or comments about any of the topics we've discussed tonight or anything else related to this task force? Any task force members have any comments? Michelle, I see you have your hand up.
A little bit about the
Michelle, I think you're having some feedback issues. Maybe try turning off the video.
Can you hear me now?
Yeah, that's better. That's better, Michelle. There we go.
My internet might not be very good. Oh, turn my camera off. Okay. How about now?
That's beautiful. Try that.
Okay, great. Okay. No, my one thing is just with a concern that I'd like to raise is where we see a lot of our small businesses are in our village centers. And so as we're thinking about redeveloping those areas, how do we maintain the small business ownership and ensure that what we don't get is a whole bunch of chain stores and big box, we won't get big box stores most likely, but how do we maintain that? And then also just recognizing that, the commercial and retail component of the village center is incredibly important for our neighborhoods and to even be able to remotely, hit that dream of live, work, and play. So that's what I'd like to say.
Thank you very much, Michelle. Let's make sure that that thought is remembered for our next conversation about village centers, and make sure that see if the task force wants to include language like that in the comp plan. Thank you. Okay, anyone else have any final comments or questions? Looking for any more hands up? Okay, all right. Well, thanks to everybody. I think we are moving forward. I know we have some thorny issues to work through. I want to thank John Mooney for stepping up and putting together that work group and framing it up in a way that I think some of those issues can be worked through. Also want to thank staff for coming forward and helping this process move along. I know this has been a little bit of a slog, and I know we're trying to pick it up. Just so you know, I am not going to sacrifice the opportunity for full task force participation and full public participation to the hope of moving things to completion too quickly. That we're gonna do this right, and I think we may have turned a corner tonight in terms of getting us on track. That said, we do have a good amount of work to do, and I would very much encourage anybody who has additional thoughts or ideas on how things could be done better to please contact me, contact my office. Jose is all ears on this. So any final comments or questions before we adjourn?
I just want to say thank you so much, Walter, to you and to your staff and the staff at Fairfax County. This is such an important process, and you're really handling it very well. And, I, for one, really appreciate it.
Thank you, Lynn. Appreciate that. Okay. All right. Well, we'll get 4 minutes back in our lives, 4 before 9. So have a nice rest of the evening, everybody, and we'll see each other again in a couple of weeks.
Thanks, Walter.
Thank you, Walter.